Good day, class. I am Ma'am April May G. Agustin, and for today, we will be discussing another lesson which is all about the hydrometeorological hazards. But before we proceed, let us have our opening prayer. Let us bow our head and feel the presence of our Lord. God of grace, we open our hearts, mind, and souls to worship to you. Thank you that today we dwell in your kingdom and live in your presence. Thank you that as we gather together, we join with all Christians across the world to glorify your holy name. Come be with us, inspire us, and lead us in our time together. We ask all this in the beautiful name of Jesus. Amen. Let us check your attendance for today. Kindly type in your complete name and comment it to the comment section. As we go on with our lesson for today, here are the objectives. At the end of the lesson, you are expected to: first one is to identify some examples of hydrometeorological hazards. Second is to determine the signs of an impending hydrometeorological hazard. And the third one is to value the importance of developing a family emergency preparedness plan. Let us first have a short recap of your previous topic. So for our first activity, you will be asked to watch a short video presentation, a short video clip about geological hazard provided with the guided question. So I'm going to present to you first the guided question before we proceed with the video presentation. Okay, so prior to the video presentation, here are the guided questions. So the first one is, define the geologic hazards and what are the different examples of geologic hazards. And then for our second guided question, what are the things needed to be done to be prepared for these types of disasters?
But wait! What does geological hazard means?
Geological hazard is a geological and environmental process. It includes earthquakes, landslides, floods, and volcanic eruptions. It is responsible for the deaths of many people, damage to properties, and destruction to our environment. Philippines is a home of many active volcanoes because it is situated in a region called the Pacific Ring of Fire. When a volcano shows signs of eruptions, geologic events like earthquake and landslides follow. So, it is important for you to be aware on how it happens to reduce the possible effects it may cause. Here are the important things to do to become more aware and ready when it happens. Step 1. Secure your space. Secure your space by identifying hazards and securing movable items. Step 2. Plan to be safe. Plan to be safe by creating a disaster plan and deciding how you will communicate in an emergency. Step 3. Organize disaster supplies. Organize disaster supplies in a convenient locations. Step 4. Minimize financial hardship. Minimize financial hardship by organizing important documents, strengthening your property, and considering insurance.
Okay, so let us now process your answers. Are you ready? Okay, so let us now answer the first guided question. Define geologic hazards and what are the different examples of geologic hazards? When we say geological hazards, it is being defined as the internal earth processes or tectonic origin, such as earthquakes, geological fault activity, tsunamis, volcanic activity, and emissions, as well as external processes such as mass movements. That includes landslides, rock slides, rock falls, or avalanches, surfaces collapses, and expansive soils and debris or mud flows. Geological hazards can be single, sequential, or combined in their origin and effects. Our second guided question is, what are the things need to be done to be prepared for these types of disasters? Awareness, education, preparedness and prediction, and warning systems can reduce the disruptive impacts of a natural disaster on communities. Mitigation measures such as adoption of zoning, land use practices, and building codes are needed. However, to prevent or reduce actual damage from hazards. Let us now proceed with your next task entitled Word Association. So the question is, what word or words can you associate with the term hydrometeorological hazards? These are the words that you might think associated with the term hydrometeorological hazard. So we have the word cyclone, storm surge, La Nina, casualties, lightning storms or thunderstorms, drought, potential source of harm, El Nino, harmful, and rain. First, let's dissect the words and explain their definitions. Hydrometeorology. It's a branch of meteorology and hydrology that studies the transfer of water and energy between the land surface and the lower atmosphere. A hazard is an agent that can cause harm or damage to humans, property, or the environment. Risk is the probability that exposure to a hazard will lead to a negative consequence, or more simply, a hazard poses no risk if there is no exposure to that hazard. Have there been times in your life when you experienced these hydrometeorological hazards? The Philippines is prone to many natural hazards due to its geologic and geographic settings. Geological natural hazards are, for examples, earthquakes, landslides, sinkhole, volcanic eruptions, and tsunamis. They can be caused by earthquakes or by extreme weather conditions. Meteorological natural hazards are weather-related hazards such as heat, drought, forest fires, storms, floods, high water, or heavy rain. Let us have first a recap about the location of the Philippines. The Philippines belongs to the Pacific Ring of Fire, where the oceanic Philippine Plate and several smaller microplates are subducting along the Philippine Trench to the east, and the Luzon, Sulu, and several other small trenches to the west. The tectonic setting of the Philippines is complex. The Philippines is also prone to tropical cyclones due to its geographical location, which generally produce heavy rains and flooding of large areas, and also strong winds, which results in heavy casualties to human life and destructions to crops and properties. The Philippines straddles the Typhoon Belt, an area in the western Pacific Ocean where nearly one-third of the world's tropical cyclones form. This area is not only the most active in the world, but also has the most intense storms globally. Located along the typhoon belt in the Pacific, the Philippines is visited by an average of 20 typhoons every year, 5 of which are destructive. Being situated in the Pacific Ring of Fire makes it vulnerable to frequent earthquakes and volcanic eruptions. Pause and think about this. Why do typhoons often form in areas near the equator like the Philippines? So what do you think is the answer? This is because Pacific Ocean is also found in the equatorial plain, and the Earth's equator receives enough sunlight to generate typhoons as well. Philippines is located just west of Pacific Ocean, where hundreds of typhoons are formed every year. This is the reason why the Philippines is always bombarded by typhoons. According to UNISDR, or the United Nations Office for Disaster Risk Reduction, hydrometeorological hazard is a phenomenon of atmospheric, hydrological, or oceanographic nature that may cause loss of life, injury, or other health impacts, property damage, loss of livelihoods and services, social and economic disruption, or environmental damage. Let us now proceed in discussing the different hydrometeorological hazards in the Philippines. The first hydrometeorological hazard in the Philippines is typhoon. A typhoon is an extremely large, powerful, and destructive storm that occurs especially in the region of the Philippines or the China Sea. A typhoon is a mature tropical cyclone that develops between 180 degrees and 100 degrees east in the northern hemisphere. This region is referred to as the Northwestern Pacific Basin and is the most active tropical cyclone basin on Earth, accounting for almost one-third of the world's annual tropical cyclones. Pause and think about this. What is the difference between a typhoon and hurricane? The only difference between a hurricane and a typhoon is the location where the storm occurs. In the North Atlantic Ocean and Northeast Pacific, the term hurricane is used, whereas the same disturbance is called a typhoon in the Northwest Pacific Ocean and a tropical cyclone, or sometimes a severe tropical cyclone or severe cyclonic storms in the southern Pacific and Indian Ocean. Pause and think about this. How does a typhoon form? For you to answer this question, I prepared a video about the formation of typhoon. And prior to the video that you're going to watch, you have to answer these guided questions. Here are the guided questions. You can have a screenshot of this portion or you can copy it directly to your notebook. So the first question is, why does a typhoon exist? Number two, differentiate hurricane from cyclone and typhoon. And then third one, what are the ingredients for a tropical cyclone? Let us now proceed with the video about the formation of typhoon.
Earthspan. Good day, learners. This is Earthspan. For today's topic, we are going to talk about typhoons and how do they form. So what are typhoons? Typhoons are a bunch of clouds and thunderstorms that originate over tropical or subtropical ocean waters, forming a closed circulation. Now we can notice a lot of people mention different names like hurricane, tropical cyclone, and typhoon, but refer to only one phenomenon that differs on its location. Hurricane is a tropical cyclone that originates in North America and the Caribbean. In the Indian Ocean, they are called cyclones, and in Southeast Asia, they are called typhoons. Well, we can say that these typhoons simply exist because it's a natural happening that occurs from time to time. The ingredients for tropical cyclones to happen include a pre-existing weather disturbance, warm tropical oceans, moisture, and relatively light winds. If these conditions continue long enough, they can combine to produce the violent winds, large waves, torrential rains, and floods we associate with this phenomenon. Now for a fun fact, did you know that the biggest ever storm on record was Typhoon Tip in 1979 near Micronesia in the Western Pacific? It was 2,200 kilometers wide with 305 km per hour winds. Now how do typhoons form? Typhoons form over the warm ocean water of the tropics. When warm moist air over the water rises, it is replaced by cooler air. The cooler air will then warm and start to rise. The temperature difference between the warm, rising air and the cooler environment enhances the upward movement of the rising air. This cycle causes huge storm clouds to form that will begin to rotate with the spin of the earth, forming an organized system. If there is enough warm water, the cycle will continue and the storm clouds and wind spins will grow, causing a typhoon to form. So where do typhoons occur? Tropical cyclones occur over the ocean with plenty of warm water, usually in the areas near the equator, because warm water in these areas allow typhoons to form. Typhoon season is typically between late June until sometime during the month of December. But can we prevent it? Well, as we mentioned earlier, it is a natural phenomenon. We cannot prevent it, but somehow we can predict or forecast it with the use of different tools and advanced technology. At least we can prevent its destructive effects. So learners, that is all about typhoons. Once again, this is Earthpen. Learning has never been this easy for anyone, anywhere. Have a nice day.
No one can control the weather despite the progress in modern technology to predict it. This is true especially for extreme weather conditions like typhoons. However, the weather's harmful effects like floods can be lessened by taking steps to preserve our environment. Floods can be lessened by reforestation or planting trees to replace the cut ones. How? The roots of trees hold the soil as they absorb rainwater. The more trees there are, the more soil is held together. And more soil means more water will be absorbed. Therefore, less water will flow to the lowlands, decreasing the chances of flood or flash flood. Highlands or mountains can break the strong winds brought about by cyclones. Quarrying, especially in the mountains, causes landslides. Because of this, we lose the walls that give protection against the force of cyclone winds. As a result, communities are exposed to destructive forces of cyclones. Improper disposal of garbage by throwing it anywhere can also contribute to flooding. The uncollected garbage that piles up in the streets is carried into the drainage when it rains. These wastes clog the drainage system, causing more floods. Flooding in low areas can be lessened by proper garbage disposal. Proper garbage disposal does not only mean throwing garbage in the trash can or garbage pit. It also means classifying wastes into biodegradable and non biodegradable materials. Biodegradable wastes like spoiled food, leaves, paper, and wood can be buried and left to decay or decompose, and later be used as fertilizers for potted plants and gardens. Non biodegradable materials like glass bottles, plastic bottles, and rubber materials can be used for other purposes. This is what we call recycling. By burying the biodegradable materials and recycling the non biodegradable ones, there will be less waste in our surroundings.
Let us now answer the given guided questions. So the first question is, why does a typhoon exist? What do you think is the answer? So according to the video, it is a natural phenomenon that exists from time to time. And then number two, second guided question, differentiate hurricane from cyclone and typhoon. So hurricanes and typhoons are the same weather phenomenon or the tropical cyclone. So the same type of disturbance in the Northwest Pacific is called a typhoon. Meanwhile, in the South Pacific and Indian Ocean, the generic term tropical cyclone is used, regardless of the strength of wind associated with the weather system. And then for the last guided question, what are the ingredients for a tropical cyclone? So according to the video that you have watched, what are the ingredients? So the first one is the pre-existing weather disturbance, warm tropical oceans, moisture, and the last one is relatively light winds. Another type of hydrometeorological hazard in the Philippines is thunderstorm. So thunderstorm is a weather condition generally characterized by heavy rain, thunder, and lightning, and a possibility of tornado. And what is a tornado? A tornado is a violent rotating column of air extending from a thunderstorm to the ground. The most violent tornadoes are capable of tremendous destruction with wind speeds of up to 300 miles per hour. They can destroy large buildings, uproot trees, and hurl vehicles hundreds of yards. They can also drive straw into trees. The third example of hydrometeorological hazard in the Philippines is flash flood. A flash flood is a local flood of short duration generally resulting from heavy rainfall in the immediate vicinity. According to the National Weather Services, flash floods can be caused by a number of things that is most often due to extremely heavy rainfall from thunderstorms. Flash floods can occur due to dam breaks or mudslides. The intensity of the rainfall, the local and distribution of the rainfall, the land use and topography, vegetation types and growth or the density, soil type, and soil water content all determine just how quickly the flash flooding may occur and influence where it may occur. Another example of hydrometeorological hazard in the Philippines is flood. Flood is generally referred to as the running and overlaying of water on land that are not ordinarily covered by it. According to World Health Organization, floods are the most frequent type of natural disaster and occur when an overflow of water submerges land that is usually dry. Floods are often caused by heavy rainfall, rapid snowmelt, or a storm surge from a tropical cyclone or tsunami in a coastal area. Another example of hydrometeorological hazard in the Philippines is storm surge. Storm surge is the escalating seawater to the coast above normal sea level. A storm surge is a rise in sea level that occurs during tropical cyclones, intense storms also known as typhoons or hurricanes. The storms produce strong winds that push the water into shore, which can lead to flooding. This makes storm surges very dangerous for coastal regions. Another example of hydrometeorological hazard in the Philippines is El Nino. El Nino is a flow of unusually warm water along the western coast of South America that causes many changes in weather in other places. High pressure systems reduce evaporation and moisture in the atmosphere. El Nino, as the surface temperature of the Pacific Ocean around the central South American coast increases, storm patterns are disrupted. This phenomenon is thought to create droughts. Another example of hydrometeorological hazard in the Philippines is La Nina. La Nina is a climate pattern that describes the cooling of surface ocean water along the tropical west coast of South America. La Nina is considered to be the counterpart to El Nino, which is characterized by unusually warm ocean temperatures in the equatorial region of the Pacific Ocean. Let us now proceed in discussing the different signs of an impending hydrometeorological hazard. Let us proceed with the first one, signs of an impending typhoon. It includes the following: increased ocean swell, barometric pressure drop, wind speed, and heavier rainfall. The weather of a particular location can show signs of the approaching tropical cyclone, such as increasing swell, increasing cloudiness, falling barometric pressure, increasing tides, squalls, and heavy rainfall. The ocean swell, coming in 5 seconds apart, is beginning to be obscured by wind-driven waves, and small white caps begin to appear on the ocean surface. Small low clouds appear overhead. The barometer is falling by zero point 0.2 millibars per hour. The wind picks up to 34 miles per hour. Let us now proceed with the different signs of an impending thunderstorm. So before a thunderstorm, there are large, puffy cumulus clouds, darkening sky and clouds, abrupt changes in wind direction, sudden drop in temperature, drop in atmospheric pressure. It also includes cloud formations, darkening of the clouds, sky lightning, and strong winds. Signs of an impending flash flood or flood. It includes the following: continuous storms, typhoons and rain, rapidly rising of water, water carrying twigs, logs and other debris, distant thunder and muddy water. Common warning signs includes intense rainfall, dam or levee failure as well as other events such as slow-moving tropical storms and early snow melting can all contribute to flooding whether you live in a flood zone or not. Signs of an impending storm surge. Storm surge, also known as daluyong ng bagyo, is the abnormal rise in sea level that occurs during tropical cyclones or bagyo. It is caused by strong winds and low atmospheric pressures produced by tropical cyclones. As the tropical cyclone approaches the coast, strong winds pushes the ocean water over the low-lying coastal areas, which can lead to flooding. This makes storm surges very dangerous. And here are some of the signs of an impending storm surges. Formation of cumulonimbus clouds, having darker skies, low pressure, strong winds, and the rising of sea water. Storm surge heights from mean sea level and its impact. 1 meter, be informed. Minor damage to communities. Flooding is possible in low-lying areas. If the storm surge height is 1 to 2 meters, storm surge is possible. There are moderate to significant damage to communities. Flooding is possible in low-lying areas. 2.1 to 3 meters, storm surge is expected. There are severe damage to coastal communities and marine infrastructures and cancellation of all marine-related activities. Significant erosion to beaches and possible of river flooding. And if it is greater than 3 meters, storm surge is catastrophic, meaning life-threatening and extensive inundation from rising seawater moving inland from the shoreline. Extreme damage to coastal communities and marine infrastructure. River flooding is aggravated due to storm surge. Signs of an impending El Nino includes the following: hot weather, high pressure, gradually drying of the land, and changes in temperature. First signs of an El Nino: rise in surface pressure over the Indian Ocean, Indonesia, and Australia. Fall in air pressure over Tahiti and the rest of the Central and Eastern Pacific Ocean. Trade winds in the South Pacific weaken and head east. Warm air rises near Peru, causing rain in the northern Peruvian deserts. Warm water spreads from the West Pacific and the Indian Ocean to the East Pacific. It takes the rain with it, causing extensive drought in the western Pacific and rainfall in the normally dry eastern Pacific. Signs of an impending La Nina. The first signs of an impending El Nino or La Nina event are often observed in the ocean. The Bureau of Meteorology monitors and reports on a range of ENSO indicators including short-term bursts of tropical rainfall activity, water temperatures at the sea surface and at depth. Pause and think about this. What are the precautionary measures to be taken to mitigate hydrometeorological hazards? In order to mitigate hydrometeorological hazards, we have to be prepared. Let us now proceed in discussing Family Emergency Preparedness Plan. Family Emergency Preparedness Plan is a personalized action plan that lets each member of a household know what to do in particular disaster situations and how to be prepared in advance. How to create a family disaster plan. Number one is to gather information. Second is to know the warning signals for your area. Third one is to obtain insurance for your family and home. Fourth one is to stay alert for emergency broadcast. And then fifth, to choose a post-hazard meeting place for your family. And the next one is to make a family communication plan. And then last one is to make a family emergency supply kit. Let us now proceed with the family disaster plan sample. So this is the template of a family disaster plan. The source is from the American Red Cross. So the first needed information here is the family last name or the household address, followed by the date. And then next one is the family members of the family, together with the household contact number. So if needed, additional space is provided in number 10 below. So you're just going to write down here or to enumerate, to list down the names of the family members, followed by their cell phone numbers and email address. And then next is the pets information. If you have a dog, you write here the name of your dog, its type, color, and registration number. Kung meron, kindly write it also. Anyways, this is only a template. Pwede i-include yung registration number kung meron, pero kung wala, pwede namang hindi na. Okay, so let us proceed with the first part of the family disaster plan sample, the plan of action. So, number one, we have here sets of question or things to do. For number one, the disasters most likely to affect our household are. So, kindly enumerate here what are the expected disasters. So, for example, flood, flash flood, storm surge. And then question number two, item number two, What are the escape routes from our home? And then number 3, if separated during an emergency, what is our meeting place near our home? And then number 4, if we cannot return home or are asked to evacuate, what is our meeting place outside of our neighborhood? You're just going to answer the following questions. Okay, so follow up question for number 4. What is our route to get there in an alternate route if the first route is impossible? And then question number 5 or number 5. In the event our household is separated or unable to communicate with each other, our emergency contact outside of our immediate area is, you're just going to provide his or her name, home phone or the cell phone number, followed by the email address. And then number 6, if at school or daycare, our child or children for parents, our child or children will be evacuated to, kindly list down or write down the child's name and together with the evacuation site, the complete address and the contact information of the evacuation site. Okay, so for number 7, our plan for people in our household with a disability or special need is, you're going to write down the name of the person and then your plan. And then number 8, during certain emergencies, local authorities may direct us to shelter in place in our home, an accessible safe room where we can go, seal windows, vents and doors, and listen to emergency broadcast for instruction is, you're just going to identify what particular part of your house is that safe room for all of you. And then let us proceed. Okay, so for number 9, family member responsibilities in the event of a disaster. So given here is the task and then the description of the task, and then on the third column, as you can see, the family member responsible. So for the disaster kit, for example, who is responsible for that? You're just going to write down the specific name or whoever he or she is who will do that or who is responsible for that task. Okay, so for item number 10, other information, if not able to be included above. So you're going to write here for number 10, the other informations needed na nakalimutan ninyong ilagay doon sa items 1 to 9. What are the different things to do before a disaster strikes? The first one is to develop a disaster plan. Second is to develop a family communication plan. Third one is to prepare a 72-hour response kit. Third one is prepare a first aid kit. And then next is to make sure everyone in the family knows the plan. You also have to practice the plan. Have enough water for 72 hours. and also store non-perishable goods. What to do when disaster strikes? Learn evacuation routes. Contact your local officials and find out how you should get out of your area if you need to. Second is to have a family emergency plan. Sit down and talk about the emergencies that are most likely to happen in your area. Third one is to assemble an emergency kit, and the last one is to keep your gas tank filled. Let us now proceed with your first formative assessment. So for activity letter A, the instruction is to simply complete the table. As you can see here, we have here a table with 3 columns. So for column number 1, the first column is for the different examples of hydrometeorological hazard, followed by, on the second column, short description, and then on the third column, the different signs or the signs of an impending hydrometeorological hazard. You can answer this on your notebook. Now let us proceed with your second activity. So for your second activity, you're going to prepare your own family disaster plan sample, and you can use the provided template during our discussion. So as you can see here on the slide, we have here the rubrics to be used in grading your output, considering the given points per description of the criteria. You can use your notebook or a one whole sheet of paper in answering this activity or in doing this activity. After learning this lesson, what are the implications of this to your daily life? With regards to the topic that we have discussed today, which is all about the hydrometeorological hazards, these are the points to be remembered. So the first one is be up to date. Monitoring and forecasting of the occurrence, intensity, and evolution of hydrometeorological extreme events have been critical components for a variety of humanitarian and government agencies in their efforts to prepare, mitigate, and manage responses to disaster, aiming at saving lives and limiting damage. And then, aside from that, second is to know how to prepare your own family disaster plan. And then, third point to remember is always be prepared and be aware of the things to do in case of a disaster. And most important is to pray sincerely to God that He grant us enough strength to surpass all the natural disaster that we might encounter. For your evaluation for today, kindly click in the evaluation form link below and then you will be diverted to your quiz. For your additional activity, kindly research about the benefits and the harmful effects of fire to human beings. Write your answer in a one whole sheet of paper or type it in using Microsoft Word. Let us pause and think about this. This is from Petra Namkova. Petra Namkova is a Czech model, television host, and philanthropist who founded the Happy Hearts Fund. So according to her, we cannot stop natural disasters, but we can arm ourselves with knowledge. So many lives wouldn't have to be lost if there was enough disaster preparedness. Thank you so much for attending my class today, and I hope that you have learned something. All the pictures and information used in the PowerPoint presentation are credits to the rightful owner.